Hey Kaiju fans, so this will be part 2 of my book review, and for those who didn't see the first video, this is a book I bought in the early 90s when I was about, let's call it 6 to 7 years old, give or take, and this is kind of the complete Godzilla guidebook up until that time frame. Has a lot of sentimental value, at least for me, and I'll go ahead and go through the second part of this. And obviously, if you do like our content, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe, and head on over to our website, kaijukingdomcollectibles.com. We have all kinds of Godzilla and Friends products. Okay, now kind of getting into the middle of the book here. This is another page I always found amusing. I guess this kind of goes into the paleontological backstory of Godzilla. So, I'd always found this little drawing kind of funny because he's kind of this sea creature, and then maybe he evolved over time to be walking upright, and just being able to kind of look at the Japanese text here using Google Translate. There is a backstory to how the creature evolved that eventually became Godzilla based upon the paleontological record. So yeah, it's just a lot of cool content if you kind of want to know the backstory and the history, as opposed to just assuming Godzilla arrived in the 50s and caused destruction. Okay, and there's another page I've always found amusing too. So so the question at the top here essentially reads, is Godzilla smart? And I think for all intents and purposes, the description says he's kind of dumb, at least in the maybe the more the Showa series. But then once you get to more him being a hero, in the 60s and maybe even 70s, he maybe gets a little bit smarter. But it's funny here because he's trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, and he's totally getting... he's just totally confused about it, so I always found that amusing. And third section talks about, does he have ears or can he hear? And you kind of see an old version of Godzilla struggling to hear, and then the newer version, I guess, has more prominent ears, and he is able to kind of hear the conversation better. So I think that's always kind of a funny take. Okay, here's another page that I do like. This is from Destroy All Monsters, but it kind of goes to show the cross-section of the island. For those who are not familiar with that particular movie, I guess the world basically puts all the monsters on a single island to try to manage them, because otherwise they would be running rampant all over the place. But this is kind of like the underground structure and the sort of the topography of the island. So yeah, you see Ibra over here, Kamakura, you see Gabara, the giant condor, Rodan, Godzilla, Mothra, all the other kind of guys. And I always like this because it kind of it went that extra step lower to kind of show you what was underground. And I've always liked maps and kind of looking at cross sections of islands and other structures. So I always found this amusing. Okay, and so this is also a pretty cool section here. It's about how to actually, I guess, subdue and or eliminate Godzilla. And so I found this kind of interesting in using Google Translate. So I guess the idea here is that if you can blast him with electricity somehow, you can kind of use the water to your advantage. I guess water can conduct electricity, and it could cause a heck of a lot of problems. So I think the idea here is to have 4 towers that sort of close in on him and sort of harness him and keep him from causing forms of destruction. So I think it's kind of a interesting hypothetical take on a way to subdue him. Okay, so this one here is another way to kind of subdue him. I think this is more of like in the cold climates, but I think the idea is that you have to create some kind of sinkhole and to basically bury him underground. I think everything about this is about keeping him confined and using, I guess, the natural geography of the Earth to enclose him so he doesn't cause any more destruction. Okay, and then this final one is also interesting as well. I guess it's going to take a lot of energy weapons and maybe even nuclear weapons for all I know. But I think the idea here is to try to corner him in using these apparatuses, almost like a shell. and having heat shields built into each of these, I guess, layers of an egg or portions of an egg, and you just basically try to confine him, and anytime he sends out an energy blast, sort of counteract it by reflecting that energy back to him, and eventually my guess is that you trap him at that point. So yeah, another kind of innovative way to sort of eliminate his reign of terror. Okay, and sorry, I'm going to backtrack just one page. This will be the final section here, but this actually is a description and a drawing of Godzilla, how he spits out his heat ray or his radioactive breath. And based upon what the text says, there's a uranium sac that's right here, and then it somehow gets into this radioactive chamber that's insulated from the rest of his body, because you can imagine if you have radioactive activity, I think biologically no creature could survive, but somewhere or another it's sort of insulated in this sac in his stomach area. And then when he gets angry, he sort of inhales, uranium passes through to this sac, it becomes radioactive, and then he blasts it out his mouth. So I thought that's a kind of an interesting biological and maybe even somewhat scientifically accurate take on how Godzilla is able to spit out that heat breath, and as opposed to it just being assumed that it's magic or it's just sci-fi and there's really no description behind it. So yeah, I really like this description and this chart here. Okay guys, yeah, that about wraps it up. So yeah, 2-part video. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time.